August 3rd, 1991, just after 21. On the listing deck of the Greek cruise ship MV Oceanos, somewhere in the Indian Ocean off the wild coast of South Africa, a 37-year-old musician named Moss Hills goes looking for the captain. The ship has been rolling for hours. The storm outside is running at 10-meter swells. Below decks, the engine room has flooded. The Oceanos has lost propulsion. She is sitting dead in the water, broadside to one of the worst storms to hit the South African coast in years, and she is listing further with every passing minute. 571 people are aboard. They have been told nothing. When Moss Hills reaches the bridge, it is empty. He checks the officers' quarters. Empty. He goes to the lifeboat deck, and there, in a life jacket boarding a lifeboat already being lowered toward the black water below, is Captain Yiannis Avranas. Moss Hills is not a sailor. He is not a licensed officer. He has no training in navigation, emergency procedure, or maritime rescue. He is the ship's entertainment director. He was booked to play guitar in the lounge that evening. He goes back inside. He finds a radio. And what he does next will save every person still on board. In 14 hours, the MV Oceanos will roll onto her side and sink beneath the Indian Ocean. 571 people boarded her. 571 will survive, and the man most responsible for that will be a musician who was supposed to be on stage. The Oceanos was not a young ship in 1991. She had been launched in 1952 at the La Seine-sur-Mer shipyards in France as the Jean Laborde, built for the passenger trade between France and its colonies in the Indian Ocean. In the decades that followed, she changed hands, changed names, and changed routes. The Mykenai, the Eastern Princess, and finally, in 1976, bought by Epirotiki Lines of Greece and renamed the Okeanos. By 1991, she was 39 years old. Not old for a well-maintained ship, a huge problem for a ship that had not been. Epirotiki operated her on budget cruises, Mediterranean voyages in summer, repositioned to South Africa in the Southern Hemisphere's warmer months. She was not a luxury vessel. She was affordable. She carried the kind of passengers who were taking perhaps their first cruise, or their last affordable one. Retired couples, families, tourists wanting to see the South African coast from the water. She had a specific structural weakness that had been noted and never fully resolved. In her engine room, a sewage discharge pipe ran through the hull below the waterline. The pipe had developed a crack. In calm water, it leaked. In rough seas, it would not leak. It would open, and when it opened, it would become a direct channel between the Indian Ocean and the interior of the ship. The repair had been discussed. It had not been done. On August 2nd, 1991, the Oceanos departed East London on South Africa's eastern coast, bound for Cape Town. 571 people aboard, 361 passengers, 210 crew. Among the entertainers contracted for the voyage were Moss Hills and his wife Tracy, a South African couple who had worked the Oceanos circuit before. Moss ran the shows. Tracy sang. They knew the ship and they knew the route. The weather forecast for the following day warned of a developing storm system off the wild coast. Significant swell, strong winds. Nothing, the officers agreed, that the Oceanos had not handled before. She had, but the crack in the pipe had never been tested by what was coming. August 3rd, 1991. By mid-afternoon, the storm had arrived ahead of schedule. The swell was already at 6 meters and climbing. The Oceanos was rolling heavily, her decks wet with spray, her passengers retreating below. By evening, the seas had built to 10 meters. The coast of South Africa was 60 kilometers to the west, close enough to see on a clear day, invisible now behind rain and darkness. In the dining room, the evening service had become difficult. Plates slid, glasses toppled. A few passengers who had come down for dinner gave up and went back to their cabins. Moss Hills was scheduled to perform that night. He canceled the show. Nobody argued. Below the dining room, 3 decks down in the engine room, the storm was doing what calm water never could. Each wave that struck the hull flexed the steel around the cracked pipe. The crack widened. At around 1900, the water began coming in. Not a trickle, a flow. The engineers moved to contain it. They could not. The bilge pumps ran at full capacity. They could not keep pace. At 2030, the seawater reached the generators. The engines died. The Oceanos lost propulsion. Dead in the water, broadside to a 10-meter swell, she began to roll at angles that no cruise ship is built to sustain. In the cabins, luggage slid across floors. In the corridors, passengers gripped the railings. At 2100, the lights went out. Emergency power came on within seconds, but the quality of the light was different, dimmer, yellower, and the passengers who had been telling themselves this was ordinary knew, in that moment, that it was not. No announcement came. No voice over the speakers. The crew that passengers encountered in the corridors gave no clear information. Some said it was a power failure. Some said the engineers were working on it. Some said nothing at all and kept moving. What none of the passengers yet knew was that the senior officers of the MV Oceanos had already made a decision. They were not going to the passengers. They were going to the lifeboats. Moss Hills went looking for answers. He moved through the listing corridors deck by deck, past frightened passengers sitting against the walls, past crew members who could not or would not tell him what was happening, until he reached the bridge. The bridge was empty. The instruments were running on emergency power. No officer was present. No one at the wheel. No one at the radio. No one at the controls of a ship carrying 571 people in a 10-meter storm. He checked the officers' quarters. Empty. He went to the lifeboat deck. What he found there has been documented in the testimonies of multiple passengers and crew who witnessed it. The senior officers of the MV Oceanos, among them Captain Yiannis Avranas, were at the lifeboats, not supervising their launch, not coordinating passenger evacuation, boarding them in life jackets, in the dark, over the side of the ship, down toward the black water below. No ship-wide announcement had been made. No distress call had been properly issued through official channels. No instruction had been given to a single passenger. The evacuation order, the one legal obligation above all others that falls to the master of a vessel in distress, had not been given. Avranas would later say, in a television interview that aired around the world, that he had left the ship because he needed to be in a position to coordinate the rescue from below. He said it without hesitation. He left. The boats went down, and 571 people were still inside. Moss Hills went back inside. He found Tracy. He found the ship's radio. And he did the one thing that the captain of the MV Oceanos had not done. He called for help. The call went out at around 21:30. Moss Hills reached the South African Maritime Rescue Coordination Center and gave them everything he had, the name of the ship, her position, approximately 60 kilometers off the wild coast, the number of people aboard, the state of the hull, and the fact that the officers had left. He was the entertainment director. There was no one else. The South African military response was immediate. 6 military helicopters were scrambled in the dark toward one of the most remote stretches of coastline in the country, the wild coast of the Eastern Cape, named not for its scenery, but for its seas, a coastline that had claimed ships for centuries, no roads into much of it, no nearby ports, just cliff and surf, and the Indian Ocean. While the helicopters flew, Moss Hills and the entertainment staff did what the ship's officers had not. They moved through the Oceanos deck by deck. They found passengers in their cabins, in the corridors, in the dark, and they told them the truth. The ship was going down. They needed life jackets. They needed to get to the muster stations. They needed to stay calm and stay together. Tracy Hills worked a separate radio, relaying passenger counts, the ship's deteriorating condition, and the position updates to the rescue coordinators on shore. Other entertainers, singers, dancers, technicians helped elderly passengers up stairwells that were now tilting at angles that required both hands to climb. They carried children. They went back for people who could not move quickly. The ship's list was worsening by the hour. At around 1 o'clock, the first helicopter arrived on scene. It could not land. The deck angle was wrong, and the ship was moving in the swell. A rescue swimmer was winched down onto the hull. The first passengers were strapped into harnesses and lifted one at a time into the dark above the Indian Ocean. One at a time. 571 people, in the dark, in a storm. It would take all night. By dawn, the operation was the largest maritime rescue in South African history. 6 military helicopters cycling back and forth between the ship and the coast. Civilian rescue vessels closing in through the swell. The South African Navy coordinating from shore. Moss Hills still on the radio. Individual moments from that night have been documented by survivors. An elderly couple who refused to be separated, lifted together in a single harness, holding each other above the ocean. a passenger who froze at the top of the ladder and had to be talked down rung by one of the entertainers standing in the water below, a crew member who went back below decks 3 times to check for anyone left behind. The hull groaned through the night as the list deepened. Sections of the lower decks became impassable by 3 o'clock. The water inside was rising steadily, deck by deck, finding every compartment. The Oceanos was not sinking quickly. She was sinking with patience, giving up one section at a time, as if she knew what was happening and could not stop it. Moss Hills remained aboard through the night. When rescuers urged him to leave, he refused. He had a count in his head, the number of passengers still aboard, and he would not leave until the number reached 0. At 9:56 on the morning of August 4th, the last person was lifted from the MV Oceanos. Moss Hills was among the final few off the ship. At 11:07, the Oceanos rolled onto her side. She lay there for a moment on the surface of the Indian Ocean, her hull pale against the gray sky. Then her stern rose, and she went down. 571 people had been aboard. 571 survived. Not a single life was lost. Captain Yiannis Avranas gave an interview after the sinking. He was asked directly why he had left his ship before his passengers. He said that when he gives the order to abandon ship, it is not necessary for him to be the last one to leave. He was convicted by a Greek maritime tribunal. His license was suspended. The Oceanos herself was never raised. She rests today in the Indian Ocean off the wild coast of South Africa, in water deep enough that she has never been disturbed. The legal proceedings produced fines, suspensions, and revoked licenses. Epeirotiki lines eventually folded, consumed by debts and a series of disasters across its aging fleet. The crack in the pipe that sank the Oceanos was confirmed in the post-incident investigation as the primary cause. The repair that was never made. Moss Hills and Tracy gave dozens of interviews in the years that followed. They did not describe what they did as heroism. They described it as the only available option. There was no one else. 571 people. One night in the Indian Ocean. A captain who left and a musician who stayed.